time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal, presented by PSE Archery. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
This episode of the Up North Journal podcast is brought to you by PSE Archery,
Buck Baits,
Better the Hunt,
Rebel 6 Rubs and Seasonings,
Easy Cut,
Limb Walker Game Calls,
Hunter's Blend Coffee,
Packer Max,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Scent Blocker,
Scent Lock,
Copper John,
and Stanislawski Release Aids. Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal podcast, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams. Sitting in the cabin tonight, we got Ken Secloon, a special guest, sitting in, and the UNJ boat dock. You got your toe in the water down there? How's the water?
Yeah, just got it in there, just getting warmed up, and hopefully be diving in here in a second.
All right, good deal. Well, I tell you what, let's take care of some quick business here while we're getting things started here. Yeah. And as always, we've got Hunter's Blend Coffee, and we love to be able to share a special promo code with you, UNJ. If you type the UNJ promo code in at huntersblendcoffee.com, you'll save 20% on your order. Hunter's Blend has been very good to us, and if you'd go over there and help out somebody who supports us, if you'd support them, everybody wins. So go over and check them out. And also, we've got a promo code, the Up North Journal promo code, over at buckbaits.com. If you go over there and check them out, you can save 20% on your order. And everybody says, well, it's not hunting season yet. Well, you know what? They've got more than just stuff for hunting season. So go over and check it out. They got a lot of new products in their showcase. So go over and take a quick look and save yourself 20% by using that Up North Journal promo code. And we had them on last week, Rebel 6 Rubs, right here in Michigan, another Michigan company. If you use the North Journal promo code, you can go over there and you can save 20% on your order over there as well. And we got one more to go here, and that is Trips for Trade. If you go to trips4trade.com, you can save 20% over there if you use Up North 20. Over there, and you can trade hunts and trips back and forth. It's a way for hunters, fishermen, outdoors people to get together and share different experiences and swap some hunts that way. So that's all good stuff right there. All right, Ken, we've got that out of the way. You've kind of put this together for us tonight, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to let you take control of the show here and go ahead and introduce our guests and get started.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm excited to bring the show to the Up North Journal crowd tonight. Our guest tonight is Marcel Veenstra. This is a guy that I've been wanting to talk to for a very long time. He's a well-known bass fisherman here in Michigan, but all around the country, really. He's one of the top guides there is, in my opinion, and Marcel's here with us tonight. Marcel, thanks for being here. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, buddy. Hey, Ken, Mike, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really glad to be here. Want to talk a little bit of fishing tonight, so I'm ready, man.
Yeah, it's all good because, the big furry slipper has been taken off when we put boats in the water. So
yep.
I think everybody's ready. I know Ken's been chomping at the bit. Ken, did you not do a little fishing today?
I did do a little fishing today. I shot up to Gladwin and got a little fishing in, and it's nice, just a quick trip. I caught a lot of good ones, and it was good. It was good. It was a good day to get out. Maybe I'll sneak out tomorrow night too. But so Marcel, Mike alluded to it. Before we dive in, I mean, how have you been dealing with this whole crisis? I mean, how bad? I mean, are you booked out through all the summer? Is there any openings left? I mean, how's it affected you?
Well, I mean, as far as myself, I had been pretty much, I would say, about 85% booked going in.
Yeah.
I mean, the COVID problem has maybe altered things a little bit, has thrown a few cancellations because I have some clients that are a little older. They were a little bit more suspect at getting something, so they kind of bailed out. And, but there's other people that'll pick it up, no problem. Throughout the year, I pretty much will be booked every single day that I want to be booked, which is usually going to be 6 out of 7 days. And then I got 5 great guides. They all work with me. We're all a team. They don't work for me, but they work with me as a team. We communicate. And what I do is once I'm booked totally, I just, I'll move some of my new clientele over to those guys, and they'll do an awesome trip also.
Good. How can you just kind of give us a brief introduction, who you are and how you got to this point where you're guiding full time for a living here on Lake St. Clair in Michigan?
Well, really what happened is I'm originally from the East Coast. I moved to Michigan in 2004. it's a really funny story, but I wound up actually marrying my co-angler, my wife Kim, and
Nice.
I fished an Everstart tournament out here in 2002. That's how I got to Michigan. I started fishing major tournaments in early 90s. I fished a lot of the Bassmaster stuff, a lot of the FLW stuff, and I just happened to do pretty well. Early in my career, I qualified for both the FLW Tour at the time and what is now the Bassmaster Elite Series. It was called the Bassmaster Tour at the time. So I was actually one of the guys that was fishing both of the major tours, in the early 2000s. So
wow.
I did a lot of fishing, tournament fishing back then. And then once I got to the point where it's tough to make a living tournament fishing. Even if I did fairly well, it was still tough to make a living at it. And, the travel, the wear and tear of being away from home all the time, eventually I got out of it. So as far as the guiding part of it went, one of the guys out on tour, he actually lived in Michigan. He was living in Michigan, and he kind of got me into he had asked me if I was interested in guiding. So I tried it, and I really, really enjoyed it. I fell in love with guiding. I felt the gratification of seeing people happy all the time when you take them out fishing. And it was just, I felt like I could educate people with a lot of what I had learned on all my, previous years fishing the major tours. So I did a little bit of overflow, working for another guide at that time. And then I pretty much came to the conclusion that I wanted to do things a little bit different than the way, that operation was running, which was all good. And I wanted to do things myself. So I started up my own business. I'd say it had to be about 7-8 years ago now. I'm losing track of time. It's going so fast. I started up my own business, and I mean, in no time at all, I was pretty much booked every single day. And what I did at that point was look for, another individual to help me out with my overflow. And from that point, it went from 1 to 5 right now. So that's where we stand. And we're all pretty happy, all excellent guides, excellent people also, and excellent fishermen. So it's a great, it's a great situation to be in. So that's pretty much, my rundown.
Okay. What drew you to Michigan? What drew you to, obviously Lake St. Clair, famous
Well,
lake.
I was actually fishing an Everstart tournament at the time, and it was the final tournament of the year. It was on the Detroit River, and I was doing pretty well on that circuit at the time. I was, I think I was in third place going into the points, going into the last tournament of the year for the Angler of the Year, and I was like, man, I needed to have a good tournament. Well, lo and behold, on the first day of the tournament, I drew a woman, and I didn't know at that point that later she'd be my wife. But what happened was, I had a good time. We had a good time on the water. As far as she was a very good fisherman. We had, we communicated, had fun as far as talking about fishing and stuff like that. We stayed in touch, and through time, before you knew it, I was out here in Michigan, and I never actually once I moved out here, I never looked back, and I love it here. I really do.
Yeah.
It's got everything you'd want, fishing, hunting. If you like the outdoors, this is the place to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got to ask a quick question here. So,
Sure.
So, who runs the boat, her or you?
When I'm guiding, it's me. When it's her and us, she's the chief.
Fair enough. I had to ask.
That's a great story.
Oh.
Yeah, well,
That's a good one.
It was great in the tournament, because in the tournament it was, I've never had somebody. She actually came on the boat, and she actually brought waypoints with her. And it's a long story, but what happened was I had trolling motor problems. I was doing well. I had a good place to go, catch a bunch of fish, but we had some trolling motor problems. We had to get it fixed. We drove all the way back to the boat ramp, took the boat off the water, had the service crew try to service the trolling motor. We couldn't get it fit. We couldn't get it fixed, so we had to go to a backup plan. I had driven the boat from Elizabeth Park all the way to Lake St. Clair, so I came all the way back, and then we spent the last 3 hours on Lake Erie. And she had a couple waypoints that were very close to where my waypoints. I had a couple of waypoints, so we kind of snuck in between, and we caught them. We caught them really good, and lo and behold, she wound up getting a check. She got a check in the tournament, and I wound up, making the cut in the tournament. And before you know it, I was fortunate enough to even sneak Angler of the Year out of the whole ball of wax. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So
So you met your wife fishing that way, and you said the first time you had boat problems, and she still stuck with you after that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, and she still stuck with you after that, even after having that's good.
Well, I think it was that we were both persistent. We weren't going to give up. We knew that to do well, we had to just work hard for 8 hours of fishing. So at that point, when we came back, had the service crew look at things. We had about 3 to 4 hours left. We went in a totally different direction at that point. We put our nose to the grind. Both got a limit of good, solid, pretty big smallies, and I guess faith was with us. I guess it just all worked out well.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Oh, it's an awesome story.
Yeah. So more about the guide service. Someone contacts you, and what can they expect? What do they need to bring? Do you assess their skill set prior, or how does that all work if someone rings you up?
Yeah. Basically, when we do a guide trip, what we do is we let them know up front they are welcome to bring any of their equipment, lures, baits, whatever they want into the boat. But we do have all the rods and reels they need, all the tackle that they would need. As far as food goes, we have them bring their own food, but we do supply ice and water if they want some ice and water to drink. If they want to bring anything else, they're welcome to bring it, on board. But as far as on the fishing end, all they really need is a license. And I tell them a lot of times to bring sunglasses and rain gear. Sometimes we'll have some extra sunglasses. Sometimes we'll have some extra rain gear on the boat. But, in general, we tell them pretty much sunglasses, rain gear, a fishing license, and whatever they're going to eat and drink for the day other than ice and water. Tackle, we'll have everything in there. All myself and any of the other 4 or 5 guides. So, the trips we book, we book them, according to the fishermen. Some people only want to do a half-day trip, which I call as a 4-hour trip. Some people want to do an 8-hour trip, and some people want to even do longer than that, which, we'll charge a little extra to do a little bit longer. But I get guys from Texas that, hey, they're already here. They'd rather fish for 10 hours. If that's what the guy wants, that's what we're going to give them. We have trips for all kinds of people. Sometimes I get Dad and little Joey. Okay, if it's Dad and little Joey, I know that he's there, the father's there to take his son out to catch fish. At that point, I'm going to, kind of get a feel for what they're really looking for. Some people want a trophy fish. They want big fish. The dad with the son, he probably wants just to catch fish. So, we may go about things just a little bit differently in that situation. I have guys that want to, I do some trophy trips up in northern Michigan. I have guys that, they don't even care if they catch a fish all day. If they have an opportunity, they want to just have an opportunity to catch a 6-pound fish. I love it when we're doing that, but because we're going to catch fish anyway, but still, the best way to catch giant fish is to fish for giant fish. So, and then I get another group of people that really want to be educated. And that's where I think a lot of guides go wrong. They're afraid to educate the other anglers in fear that they will be able to do what you've taught them on their own. Well, my theory is this. If I teach somebody how to catch fish, I give them a good time, teach them how to fish, and they do well, what they're going to do is they may not book with me, but they're going to send 2 people to come fish with me. So I really don't care. I'm going to win one way or the other. And I love the educational part of, teaching people what I'm looking for out there, how I'm going about things, all the little different, scenarios that you may have out there. So that's a fun thing. It's a challenging thing.
Talking about the education, I want to jump in real quick with that.
Sure.
You're starting to see a little more of that all across, I think, across the outdoors. It used to be back in the day, it'd be you and a close buddy, and you didn't want anybody else going because you didn't want anybody seeing how you caught the fish, didn't see where you caught the fish. Obviously, if you're guiding, they know where you caught the fish because they're with you. But I'm starting to see even like things on the internet, people doing educational type things of how to catch a certain species or whatever the conditions may be. Is that something you're seeing more of on your side as well? I assume, right?
Yeah, I'm noticing that a lot. You got to remember things have changed dramatically in the last 20 years. Before years ago, we didn't have college teams. We didn't have high school teams. These kids are all getting a great jump, especially in this area. it's all over the place. High school teams and college teams. I mean, we have some of the Adrian College is one of the best colleges, if not the best college in the whole nation for bass fishing. So a lot of these guys are great fishermen, great kids. I know, there's a lot of them that I even know just through, meeting them. I've done seminars where I've seen them, and it's just great seeing them all do good and getting such a great jump in life. When I look back in my career, I think the one thing that I really wish I could have done differently was start doing this a lot earlier. I wasn't brought up doing, bass fishing in a tournament environment and stuff like that. We didn't have the internet to be educated and learn all the little things that you see. Now, if somebody wants to learn how to drop shot, you type in drop shot on the YouTube, and before you know it, you got a choice of 50 things to watch. I mean, you have to filter out what's good, what's not good, and what you want to see. But, there is a lot of good information out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I didn't know that Adrian College had. I've heard about the high school level, and I've heard that it was starting to creep into the colleges, but I didn't know Adrian had a college team. That's awesome. They're one of the top teams in the whole country by far. Yeah. You think it's just because of being here in Michigan and having ample opportunity to catch so many different species, or have so many lakes that's got bass in it?
I think the thing is, I think that they have the opportunity to fish for both smallmouth and largemouth. We have a lot of inland lakes. You could become pretty versatile if you stick with a lot of the inland lakes around, not just Lake St. Clair, because Lake St. Clair is a lake all by itself. But we have a lot of dock fishing, a lot of matted vegetation here, so you could do some frogging, you could do some skipping, you could jig fish, you could fish milfoil, you could fish for, as far as largemouth go, you could fish for smallmouth in numerous lakes. It could be rocky, it could be sandy. So there's a lot of things that I notice in this area that you can really do and learn on. And I also think, they're coached well. I mean, there's no doubt a college can't be good when, consistently by just the anglers, they're not just getting the best anglers all the time. I think their coach is doing a great job with the kids, and because it seems like every new group of kids that comes in there seems like they always do well. So I got to hats off to these guys. I mean the whole group of kids and the staff are doing a wonderful job.
All right, I tell you what, we're running just a little bit long here, so let's go ahead and take our first break. We're going to step outside. When we come back, I'm going to let Ken go ahead. I know he's got a million questions for you, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has reinvented the way you buy bows.
From now on, you can make the most educated decision possible
by basing your bow choice specifically on your shooting needs and goals.
All you need to do is ask yourself, what kind of shooter am I? What do I want to achieve?
PSE will help find the right category for you.
So, what kind of shooter are you?
Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back, second segment of the show. We're sitting here talking a little fishing. Special edition on a Saturday night. We're actually pre-recording this show for Mother's Day. For those of you on the podcast that are wondering why we're talking about before Mother's Day, but this is a pre-record. But we've got Ken Cicluna sitting down on the UNJ boat dock with his toes in the water. We're talking fishing tonight. So, Ken, I'm going to let you dive right back into it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Marcel, years ago when I first bought my boat, the first thing that I naturally want, I just have a little 14.5-foot aluminum boat, and on a calm day I can go on my St. Clair, and it's great. And back in those days, when spring came around, I had to get to Lake St. Clair, and I didn't know anything except to throw tubes. And so I went out there with a big bag of tubes and a fishing pole, and I couldn't believe how many boats there were this time of year. And I just went out of Selfridge there, and I think I just want to start here, in the springtime. For a guy going out, when I went out there, I just kind of hung around the boats and I caught fish, but this time of year, for the average guy who doesn't go out to St. Clair a lot or doesn't really know anything, I mean, what are you looking for on Lake St. Clair? How can you get away from the crowds, or should you just stay with the crowds and just do that? I mean, what are we targeting this time of year?
Well, this time of the year right now, I mean, if you go out there, it's tough to get away from the crowds because, first of all, half of the lake is shut down. I mean, we cannot fish Canadian waters, so that takes all the boats, keeps them in a smaller area. Predominantly, the area which we call the mile roads, that is one of the best spawning flats, in the country anywhere. So you're going to have the majority of the people coming up there and fishing in a small area. The whole key to being consistent, and one reason why a lot of my guides and I can go out there and catch fish every day is because through time I've learned all the little sweet spots on the community whole or community area. Even though it's an area, the whole key to bass fishing and to being consistently good out there is finding the sweet spots in the areas. Sweet spot could consist of a boulder. It could consist of a log that's down there. It could be a wreck that's down there, a rock pile that's down there, something of that nature. If you mark all those spots and through time and you just run to those high percentage spots, you're going to find fish almost all the time out there. So in the springtime, if you pretty much put your boat in 6 to 10 feet of water from this point on, or really from ice out all the way up until I would say about the 10th of June is about the number that I would use where things start to really change. You're going to catch fish in that area, 6 to 10 feet, no problem. That's where they're going to spawn. That's where a lot of the pre-spawn action is going to take place. And, you should have a good day.
Okay. So you alluded to, June 10th, things start to change. And, I've heard from several other guys talk about how these big schools of smallmouth, obviously they follow the bait around and they move around the lake. Can you talk about, because I've always wondered this too. I mean, how do you go about following these fish around? I mean, after June 10th, what's your first step? What are you looking for there?
Well, because I'm on the water every day, I could kind of go with the flow of things a little bit.
Yeah.
And, of course, time on the water is another thing that's going to help me. Understanding, how the fish migrate in the lake and to what they're doing. What you see in the beginning is, you got your spawning fish. Once they're done spawning, at that point, the bite changes a little bit. They're not chasing as much. It's just the females have slowed down a lot. The males have been guarding fry for a long time. They're thin, they're run down, they're beat up a little bit, they're tired. So they're not in chasing mode at that time. So at that point, you really got to start to slow down, fish things that are a little bit like a little bit more subtle type baits. I would say something like a soft stick bait, like a fluke or a caffeine shad or something of that nature. Any kind of soft stick bait also, like a Ocho, Senko, whatever somebody wants to call the bait that they use.
Yeah.
They're the kind of baits that are going to really trigger your strikes at that point. A drop shot's going to come into play big time because you can fish it slow, methodical. And then even the two bite never goes away. That's always, there. But what you're doing is you're kind of, the fish are going to start pulling out of that 6 to 10 feet. And I noticed the first really break that they take seems like it's in that 12 to 14 foot range, maybe 12 to 15 foot range. But it doesn't really last to me that long in that area unless it's a very cool year where sometimes they really never, a lot of fish will stay in that zone. Last year, for instance, was a very odd year. The water has been higher than ever. I felt we never got that really, really hot period of time. We had fish in 22 feet of water. We had fish in 6 feet of water, 4 feet of water all year long. They were so spread out. So the fish were there. They were just a lot spread out. But usually on a normal, common year, they'll stop in that 12 to 14 foot range. What you're looking for at that time, I look for is the grasses start to come into play. I start to look for little isolated grass patches. I don't really like big grassy areas. I look for isolated stuff, small patches. When I say small patches, it could be 10 yards by 20 yards, things like that. Why the grass? Because that's where you're going to find the bait. That's where the bait's going to start to migrate to. The grass generates oxygen. Oxygen's going to pull in the bait. The bait's going to pull in the bass. So that's pretty much what you're looking for. Or you're looking for irregularities out there. It could be humps, sometimes rock piles, humps, things like that out there. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Once you get by that pre-spawn, then they're going to make the next move, and it's going to continue revolving around food, the food sources. That is going to be towards where I like it the most, the middle of the lake in no man's land. It's the toughest area to figure out, but it changes every year in a lot of things, and some of it remains the same. Of course, a wreck, that'll remain the same. A boulder will remain the same. But there are the grass in the lake does change. It grows differently from year to year. And if you could find the right cabbage beds, grass beds of different kinds, I mean, you could really, really have a banner day out there. And if you find those wads of fish, you know, it can be awesome out there.
What's your favorite type of grass that you're looking for? When you see that, you're like, all right, you know, we're
cabbage.
good. What cabbage?
Yeah,
broadleaf cabbage.
Yeah, I mean, yep. If the cabbage comes up and you got, you know, a good area with a lot of cabbage, I mean, it seems like the smallies really, really like it. Smallies aren't fish that, you know, they're a lot different than a largemouth. Okay, I mean, a largemouth will ambush things. Smallies are sight feeders. They get on the edges of the grass and more. They'll run edges a lot more. They'll run the perimeters a lot more compared to a largemouth will get directly in there. He'll sit right in the grass, just like they are like under docks. They get in the thickest things. You can go punch mats in a lake, but when you punch mats in a lake, very rarely do you catch a smallmouth. They're more, you know, they move around a lot more.
Yeah. Now, you talked about something a second ago that kind of got my attention. You talked about the water level was really high. Now, and you also mentioned how the tube bite never goes away. It's always there. Now, do you notice, I mean, when the water level is up, is that bottom bite hard to get going? And do you more fish up in the water column when the water is high, or does that not matter?
You know, honestly, it doesn't really. To me, it doesn't really matter that much. It just makes the lake, makes the lake a little bit bigger. It makes spots that are normally, 10 feet, they may be 12 feet. So it changes things a little bit. But last year, with the water high, we also, the added element was the fact that we had a cooler year. So the water temperature really didn't get super warm for a long period of time. Not as warm as it does on most years. So to me, what it did was it spread things out a lot more. It really did. There were fish all over the lake to be caught. I mean, but I didn't find what I'd call the biggest groups that I was finding in previous years. The fishing was just as good, but I just had to hit more spots to do as well. Yeah. That's all it was.
Now, just like with any, I'm sure, just like with any other fisherman, I mean, you have an arsenal of baits, and I mean, how you choose your baits? I mean, is that just based on conditions, water temperature, clarity, things like that? You just have a cycle of baits that you run through for any given day?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, when I start off the season, I mean, there's no doubt when the water's cold, like it had from, let's just say, prior to today, I would say a blade bait would be one of my top choices. Whenever it's 48, 50 degrees or less, a blade bait really comes into play. I also like throwing a diving jerk bait, something, not a super big diving jerk bait, but a diving jerk bait, something that gets down just a little bit more and suspends. Something I could move through the water column, but also give it a good long pause, because a lot of times when that water's cold, you need a long pause. Another thing I do like throwing crankbaits this time of the year. When I'm cranking, it's usually going to be something that goes down 6-8 feet of water, and just something I can get into the rocks a little bit. Usually I like colors like the browns and greens and browns a little bit. If the water's dirty, I'll go with something more chartreuse, something a little bit brighter, something with some red in it also at this time of the year. But as far as the baits, go, the tube will always come into play early, and the other bait that I do throw a lot early is going to be a swim bait. But right now, this time of the year, we're getting to the time where things are going to change a little bit. Even though we haven't been on the water much, these fish are going to move to beds, really, really quickly when it occurs. So I would say within about a week, there's a good chance if it warms up within about a week or two, within the next week or two, you're going to start to see a lot more people catching fish that are going to start to move to, beds. They may be running a little bit late this year, only because the air temperature has been a little bit cooler lately. It wasn't. It warmed up early this year, though. That's the thing. But it cooled back down a little bit.
Yeah.
And we got a question from one of the people watching, from Terry. He said, as a general rule, what are your color tendencies and types of lures that you're using? I mean, just as a general rule, where somebody would start.
That's a good question. I mean, I do have on. I'll stick with Lake St. Clair a little bit, but in general, you can never go wrong with plastics, with browns and greens. Green pumpkin, watermelon, my two best colors by far. If I'm fishing for largemouth bass, if I'm fishing an inland lake, largemouth bass, there's no doubt I would be throwing something with a purple. Anything like a blue fleck or a June bug or something like that. But smallmouth bass, it's going to be greens and browns for the most part as far as plastics. Crankbaits, okay? On crankbaits, I'm a big natural color guy. I like natural colors. I stick with any of the shad-related colors as long as I'm in clear water. Early in the year, like right now, I will tie on something that's a little bit brown, a little bit green crankbaits. And like I said earlier, if it's dirty water, I'm going to go into chartreuses, reds, and oranges a little bit. But I like to really stick with the natural colors.
All right.
Okay.
I tell you what, we're bumping up here on our second break. So let's go ahead. We'll take our second break. We'll come back and we'll turn Ken loose again because I know he's got a whole list of questions there. So we're going to step outside. We'll take our next break and we'll be right back after this.
PSE Archery has always dominated the speed category. Now, the most revolutionary cam system ever to hit the market has perfected the shooting experience. Introducing PSE's Evolve Cam System, featuring extremely high let-off capabilities and the smoothest draw cycle in history. No other cam system has ever delivered this level of total comfort and total control. Experience PSE. Experience performance.
Welcome back, third segment of the show. Sitting here talking a little bass fishing. And for those of you on the podcast who aren't watching the live stream, you need to go back and watch during the commercial breaks because we just heard potato chips in comparison to fishing. I'm not going to give it away. You got to go listen in the middle of break two. That's all I'm going to say. All right, Ken, I'm going to let you take it away again.
Yeah, okay, so we talked about this time of year, how the fish move out. One thing I've always, because, the bulk of the fishing season's in the heat of the summer. I've messed around in the channels, and when I did fish, try to fish in the channels. I've never really fooled around on the main lake. You mentioned that you like to go out into no man's land, and you mentioned isolated patches of grass. Are you still looking for that same thing out in the middle of the lake? Are you looking for even deeper water?
Yeah, I don't have there's not one particular depth. I don't even pay attention to the depth. The lake is like a bowl, okay?
Yeah.
And when I'm out there, I'm constantly looking at my graph. What I'm looking for are any irregularities at all. I could tell you this. I have numerous spots that a guy could be fishing 10 yards, 20 yards away, and they won't catch a fish. And if you're when I say on the spot, you have to know what's down there. That's the thing. A lot of times it could be one individual log, one individual little piece of wood. It could be one rock. That's it. One particular rock. It could be a wreck. I do fish numerous wrecks because they're consistent fish holders. Things like that. They're little things like that. When I'm driving, into an area that I've, had success in the past, a lot of times I'm going to look at that graph. When I see grass showing up, what I'm looking for is new submergent vegetation. If you want to follow the fish, look for the new grass. When I say new grass, it's not always all the way up to the surface. The fresher the grass, the newer the grass, the more oxygen it's going to generate, which is going to attract your bait fish. And that's how the bait fish will move also. So I'm always looking for those small little patches of new fresh grass out in the middle of the lake. I'll keep an eye. If I see some cabbage coming up in the middle of the lake early in the year, what I'll do is I'll keep an eye on it. I may even mark it. Go back there in a couple weeks. And if I see more of it coming up, I know, that's the kind of an area I'm really looking for. It could be a hot area as far as that goes. Now with structure scan, side scan, and all that good stuff that we have on our electronics, a lot of times I could see out to the side. It could be one tire could be out there, and that tire could consistently hold fish. It may not hold 30 fish, but you know what? If you go to that tire just about every single time, you may be able to catch 1 to 5 fish off of it. Well, in a day, if you stop at 20 spots like that, I think if you could do the math, your numbers are going to be pretty good. Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for out there.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the electronics, and besides GPS, I know I have side imaging. Do you rely on that side imaging pretty heavy out there? Is that what part of the electronics do you rely on the most? Was it the side imaging?
that's a little tough one. I mean, of course, it's got to be your GPS because that's getting you back to the bullseye. But
no, I mean, as far as looking for structure.
But the thing is, the GPS is not going to get you to something new. So to learn, I mean, of course, it's all super critical. You can't go across the lake 100 miles an hour and actually, side scan and do stuff like that. But when I'm going from one spot to another, if I'm idling, I am always looking out to my sides to see if there's an extra log. I may, you may go 5 days in a row, never see nothing, but you may find one rock. If you mark it and you go back, that may be a bullseye. I had found something 2 years ago on Lake St. Clair. I had just gone over a little area. I was idling to another spot, and I seen something down there that caught my eye. It was definitely something round. It looked like a tire. I don't think it was a tire. I still don't know to this day what it was, but it was really crazy. I seen it. I marked it. I turned the boat around, and I wanted to go fish it, but all of a sudden, I was in the middle of the lake, and a thunderstorm was coming up, and it was coming up quick. So I was getting upset because I didn't have time to fish it. So thank God I had marked it. I went back the next, the next trip. I think it was the next day. And when I was in that area, and I caught, I think, just on this little tiny target, I caught, between my clients and myself, we had caught 7 fish off of it. So it was just something else that added to the arsenal. And if you put time in, due diligence, you're going to find a lot of that stuff out there, on the lake.
What now, as far as catching real big ones, the 5 and over, the 5s, the 6, the 7 pound fish, what it takes to bring in a mid-20s bag. I mean, have you noticed certain types of structure out there hold it, or is it kind of random? You could pull up to a wreck one day and they're, the big ones aren't there, but then you go to the wreck next week and there's a bunch of 6-pounders on it. I mean, is it kind of hit or miss like that, or do you notice a trend?
It's more of a random thing. I think it's just more than that. It comes down to time of the year. I mean, if you're looking, for a guy looking for a trophy fish, if you're looking to target fish that are over 5 pounds, especially 5.5 pounds or more, I would tell you, you're going to have to go out and pre-spawn and either very late summer into, the fall. October is a great time. If you're looking for a giant, if you're looking for the biggest fish in the lake, I think October is probably your best time. If not, a couple weeks ago. 6-pounders, your chance of getting a 6-pounder, of guys getting 6-pounders, which there aren't as many caught as people say. There are lots of 6-pounders caught by guys that don't have scales. I can tell you that. but true 6-pounders on a scale, they're a lot rarer than people think. But pre-spawn, I would say when the water temperature is below 55. Is a great time, and then fall feed. There's no doubt in the fall, that's when they really, really show up. They start to get fat, they fatten up, they're really feeding on bait fish, before the, winter time, and that's a great time to catch a giant.
Yeah. Yeah, I follow it. I follow the tournaments, and, for a while it seemed like if you had 20 to 22 pounds on Lake St. Clair, you were good. Yep. And there's some years, I think last year it took 25, 26 pounds to win out there. Yeah. And it just seems like there's cycles of that out there. And
it's true. There are cycles like that, but you got to understand another thing. Technology is getting to the point where the bass can't hide anymore. So we have so many good fishermen out there with so much technology. There aren't many things hidden out there. We're going to get to the point where every fish in that lake is going to be found, and it's going to come down to execution more. I think it's really going to come down to downsizing. Years ago, if you look back in the history of bass fishing, if you look at all the fishermen that did really, really well years ago, they were all power fishermen that fished a jig, fished a spinnerbait. They just covered a lot of water with big baits. Now, all of a sudden, with the way electronics are, and offshore fishing has become so much more popular, you're seeing the finesse fishermen now become a major player in winning a lot of tournaments on a lot of these lakes.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
I got a question here. You talking about the electronics and how things have progressed. We talk about this in the hunting industry as well. At what point does the electronics take over? Does it take away from the experience, do you think? Are we going too far? I don't know. I'm just asking, thinking out loud.
I don't think it has yet, but I think we're closing in on that. You know what I mean? It's getting to the point where it's almost like you're going to know exactly where every single fish is in the lake. I mean, it's getting that good. I don't know where it's going to get to the point where it's going to, make it not as fun, I guess. I don't know how to put it.
Right.
The thing you got to remember is you still have to trigger the bite, though. And there is an art to triggering a bite. It's not always that easy. Figuring out, when these fish become so high pressured, we're going to have to adapt because they're not going to bite as easily because they're going to know, they've been caught before. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take a lot more to catch these fish. Lighter lines, smaller baits, different techniques that, you think every technique has been found. Trust me, there's going to be something new within the next year or two. And then 2 years after that, there's going to be something new again. There always is. It's just the way it is. So
talking along those lines about triggering the bite and fish getting accustomed to a certain thing that's out there or certain style or whatever that may be. I know like in waterfowl hunting, the guys who are kind of going back to those old school ways of hiding their blinds and things are having more success because the geese or ducks haven't seen that in so long that they're going back to old school tactics. Do you think is that something you may see, or are you already seeing some of that?
I think you'll see a little bit of it. I mean, I notice, even myself, a lot of times I'll fish areas that there are no other boats, not because there's more fish there. Sometimes I'd rather fish for less fish that are active than a lot of fish that are not active, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Because there are community holes out there where there could be thousands of fish, but you put all the boats on top of them, those fish shut down. I'd rather go to a spot in the middle of the lake, may only have 20 fish, but if 5 or 10 of them fish bite, I'm going to be a lot better off than sitting over top of 1,000 that aren't biting. So I think getting away from the crowd, I think, is a good thing. I think a lot more people need to get away from the crowd, but I don't think I don't think they have the confidence to get away from the crowd. They're going to feel like they're missing something if they're not a part of the group. Me, I can't wait if I see the group, I try to go in the other direction.
It's kind of like on ice fishing. We go out and you look to see where everybody's at. And it's like, well, they're all over there. They got to be biting. So you go there, and all of a sudden, one lone guy takes off to get away from the crowd, and the crowd follows him. So I understand what you're saying. I tell you what, though, we're working up here on our last break. Let's go ahead and take our last break. When we come back, we'll spend the rest of the time we got letting Ken ask a few more questions. So let's step outside, take our next break, and we'll be right back after this.
Acceleration is part of PSE's DNA. PSE pioneered the speed movement. Now they've developed the vapor category to help you find the most powerful bows on the market to fit you.
High speed equates to intense power and building the momentum you need to be successful. Are you a vapor shooter? Find out at psearchery.com.
Welcome back. Last segment of the show. Before we get too far into this last segment, the first thing we talked about tonight was your guiding service. So if somebody that's listening or watching tonight would like to get a hold of you and talk to you about taking a trip, where can they get a hold of you? And, is it on the internet, a phone number? Tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Yep. If somebody wants to get a hold of me, they can go to my website. It's www.marcelsguideservice.com. All one word, marcelsguideservice.com. They can always find me on Instagram. Also, I'm at Instagram, Twitter. It's Marcel's Guide Service on each one of them, too. Or they could call me on my cell phone at 810-923-5035. So
and you
give me a shout, and, I will definitely – I'll tell you exactly what you can expect. It's funny because I have a lot of people, they want to know, when is the most common question, when is the best time to come up? And my answer to these people is it's always a good time to come up. The best time is when the weather is good because, our fishing, we have one of the bodies of water, Lake St. Clair, that I can say is one of the very rare bodies of water that all summer long it's good. It's not okay. It's good all summer long. There are biting fish. And in most places in the country, I get a lot of clients from Texas, Arkansas, places like that. It's too hot to even go outside. here, we may have a hot, little hot spell, but I'll tell you what, our fishing is consistently on that lake. So that's a good thing, something special that we have in our, short window of a season of 7 months of bass fishing, 8 months of bass fishing.
Right, yeah. Michigan, when it turns nasty quick, and it can stay that way for a long time. So get a hold of them, and the phone number or the website, and like you said earlier in the show, you still got spots available, right?
I do have some spots available, but then again, if I'm not available, I have 5 other guys that all work with me as a team. They help me out. They do my overflow, and all 5 of us, we communicate, we work together, we share areas. So if somebody's struggling a little bit, which is one of the best things in the world, about having a good guiding business, great guys, these guys are all outstanding fishermen, and we share information and we pull each other in if we're struggling. So it's, just an awesome group of guys.
Yeah, it's the way to be, working together, teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. So.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Well, Ken, we've got about 10, 12 minutes here, so I'm going to let you take it away again.
Yeah, Marcel, I just got a couple more questions. One thing I actually experienced it one time out there, and I know it's not the, as far as tournaments go, I don't think it's the winning deal, but, if you have a blow day and the clients want to go out, do you ever target largemouth on Lake St. Clair?
That's a tough thing for me to do. I love fishing for largemouth, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but, it's very, very rare that I'll target on Lake St. Clair, even if the wind's blowing. I feel like I could find here's the thing. Most of my clients come from out of state, from down south. A lot of the clients, when they come from down south, they're coming away from largemouth to come to catch smallmouth. So for the most part, I stay away from them. Now, that being said, I get a lot of guys from Michigan. It could be Dad with little Joey again. He needs to have a string pulled. I'm going to take him in. We're going to do a little largemouth fishing. We may go, into one of the marina areas, seawalls, a couple of the coves. We will target largemouths. We'll throw some soft stick baits up there and, do what we got to do to salvage the day if we have to get out. But usually I could get out to a place, and even if it's really windy, I could get to a place where we can catch some smallmouth. It's very rare that we can't get out and catch smallmouth. The only thing that stops the trip for the most part is, if we have small craft advisories or storms that are threatening as far as thunderstorms and stuff like that, that's what's going to, stop something from happening.
Okay. And what would you say, this is more along my lines, because I don't fish Lake St. Clair a lot, and I'd like to. I would never, probably not until I get a real bass boat, go out there on any kind of regular basis. But just for an average guy like myself that's going out there once or twice a year, what do you think the biggest mistake, the average Joe fisherman makes when they go to St. Clair and they have a bad time? And what do you think they're doing wrong? What do you see the most?
That's a little bit of a tough question.
Okay.
You really got to, before you go out on the lake, I think you really need to talk to somebody and, get a little bit of a bearing. I think you really want to launch in an area that's going to be pretty close to the area that you want to fish, so you're not running around the lake. And you got to learn to understand the fish. That's what I see sometimes. I see, some of the locals that aren't avid fishermen that go out and they struggle. It's because they're really fishing in, 5-6 feet of water when you should be fishing in 17 to 22 feet of water, stuff like that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. I do see a lot of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, that's pretty much, I covered my list of questions. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about you feel like you want to mention about your guide service or about any kind of information about the lake? Do you think the prospects are looking good this year for, I honestly do. Because of the way things went, I have a new boat that just came in. So right now, as soon as we're able to, I will be out there. I will start guiding. I did not get out prior to this, so I didn't really get a good touch of what was going on, but I do have some buddies that did get out. The lake, they all said it's fishing outstanding so far. I think with a little bit of a lack of pressure, which, we had a little bit of a lack of pressure so far, I think it's going to help out
things a little bit. I think the lake's just getting better and better. And the reason I say that, not because I guide on it, I just think the forage base is so phenomenal in that lake. We have crawfish, we have threadfins, we have spot-tailed minnows, we have juvenile yellow perch, mayflies. There's so much for these fish to eat. I think we're going to be in a good position for quite a few years to see, numerous good quality fish, on the lake. The only thing that scares me a little bit is, that we are in a small area and so many people come here to fish during the spawn. We all love to take pictures and stuff like that. And, with social media the way it is, people are holding fish out of the water a little bit longer than I think is good for the fish. But in general, I think overall, I think things are going to be great, honestly. I think the lake's going to fish really, really well this year. And I don't know, I'm expecting it to have a phenomenal year. I'll be on the lake I'm probably lose a couple of trips, but I'll probably be on St. Clair 110 days. I'll probably be up in northern Michigan where I do, I'll do trophy trips in northern Michigan, no specific lake, but I do, out the Alpena side, the Indian River area, and the Traverse City area. I'll bounce around between those three areas, and I'll do some trophy trips up there, and I think, the outlook up there should be good too. So I'm looking for a great year.
Is that more in the fall, the trophy trips?
I
northern Michigan?
I would normally go up there in May. I'll go up there. Realistically, I'd like to be up there right today, but unfortunately, the way things has gone, I can't. But I like the fall, and I like this. I like the pre-spawn bite up there a real lot if I'm fishing for trophy fish.
So
I do wish. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. Someone can call you and just say, "Hey, Marcel, I don't want to go to St. Clair. I want to go and catch a trophy in northern Michigan," and you make that happen.
I'm pretty certain. There's a very good opportunity for them to catch a pretty big fish.
No, I mean, just that's all they got to do that. I mean, just give
all
me
they
a
have
call.
To do is call me, contact me through the website, contact me through Facebook, Twitter. It doesn't matter. I mean, all avenues of social media. They can find me. I mean, if you get out on if a person gets out on my Facebook page, Marcel's Guide Service, you get out on the Facebook page. If somebody does not want to book a trip and you want to see what's going on the lake, once the season starts, once I start going out there, I'll be posting pictures just about every day. I mean, we're going to catch fish every day. I'm going to post pictures unless something happens with my phone or something like that, or cameras or whatever. But there'll be pictures posted just about all the time. And I will tell, most of the times, if it says on my post what I caught it on, I promise you that's exactly what we caught him on.
Yeah.
So I don't have to hide anything like that. It's I'm just too active on the lake. I can't hide anything.
Yeah.
You talked about social media and taking photos. That's an interesting topic. We always see people holding fish, and I've seen people hold fish different ways. What is the proper way to hold a fish so you don't injure it when you're taking a photo?
Well, the big thing is you don't want to keep the fish out of the water no longer than you have to. But when you're thumbing that fish, a lot of guys, what they'll do is they'll clamp down on the jaw and then they'll twist it really hard. They'll twist their wrist really hard. You could you could hold them kind of limp, but you use your second hand to brace underneath the fish. If you got a big fish, a smaller one you could get away with a little bit more. But those bigger fish, you got to remember, they have their jaw, and then the weight of the fish will, too much weight going one way or the other is going to, hurt the fish a little bit. I try to take care of them, baby them the best I can. The other thing is a lot of guys, and I have to admit, I'm guilty of this too somewhat, but I'm getting away from it. I highly recommend not live welling a bunch of fish during the summertime. A lot of guys want to put their 4, 5, 6 best fish in the box to get a big picture of all these big fish. When the water's cold, it's not, the fish will be fine. Early in the season, if you were allowed, you're not allowed, but if you were allowed, you'd be okay. But once, from the spawn into the hot of the summer, you don't really want to box a bunch of fish unless that water temperature's, at least in the low 70s. But once it starts getting to the mid 70s, you don't want fish in that live well for, 7-8 hours.
That makes sense. It's you don't want to hurt the fish. You want to make sure that they're there to spawn and keep reproducing and doing their thing. I mean, it's just taking care of the game. So, no, that's a great point.
It takes a 5-pound bass about 15 years, at least about 15 years to get that size. That's a long, long time. Think about it. I mean, there are only so many fish 5 pounds or more in these lakes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if a few go every year, they start dying here and there, you're going to have less and less. It's going to get tougher and tougher. But thank God, like I said, our forage base is phenomenal. We have, people are starting to pay attention to things a lot better. They're taking care of things. I think things are going to be better now. So I think we're all on the right path.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Good. Well, we're getting here close to the end of the show. Once again, I'll give you an opportunity to let everybody know once again where they can get a hold of you so that they can book a trip with you.
Yep. If you want to get a hold of me, you can call me on my cell phone, 810-923-5035, or you could find me on social media at Marcel's Guide Service on Facebook, Marcel's Guide Service on Instagram or Twitter, and you can also find me through my website, www.marcelsguideservice.com, all one word.
Well, there you go, guys and gals. Get out there, get a trip booked, get over here and come into Michigan if you're out of state. Before we let you go, something just popped in my head. If people are watching and they are out of state and they're not looking to come to Michigan, maybe they're in their home state, wherever that may be, and they're looking to book with a guide service, what's probably the most 1 or 2 important questions that they can ask a guide?
I think it's imperative to ask the guide, if he's willing to teach. If a guide is willing to teach, then I think you're going to do well with it. That means he's got confidence in what he's doing. If somebody does not want to teach you things, if they're not willing to teach you a lot of stuff, and they just want you to say, hey, you're just going to catch fish. I know you're going to catch them. That would throw up a red flag to me because that's a little bit of a sign of insecurity. So, I'd want to talk to the guys, see if he's going to teach me, let me know, show me the tactics that we're going to use on that particular day. I think that's a big thing. And I would go, I think, to social media, do a little bit of homework, see what past people say. I mean, don't get me wrong. Anybody out there could be 1 or 2 people that could badmouth somebody just because they just dislike that guy. That could happen. We know how that happens. But I mean, I would filter the 2 worst posts to the 2 best ones because it could be their best buddy telling everybody how great they are.
Right.
Filter a little bit from both ends and see what where the majority lie. If you find out where the majority lie, I think that's where, that's the type of guide you're going to have.
That's great advice. Anything else you got for him, Ken, before we wrap up the podcast portion?
No, Marcel, I just wanted to say thanks, man. I appreciate it. We covered a lot. I think we covered some good stuff here tonight, some informative stuff, and I just think it was super cool of you to come on and talk to us. And can't thank you enough. I wish you for a good season, and I'll see you on the water.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you guys having me on, and everybody else out there, I hope everybody has a great fishing season. So stay in touch, guys.
All right, that's going to do it for us here on the podcast portion. We'll wrap it up, and don't forget, we'll be back again next week. Y'all take care. This episode was brought to you by PSE Archery,
Buck Bait,
Better the Hunt,
Rebel 6 Rubs and Seasonings,
Easy Cut,
Lim Walker Game Calls,
Hunter's Plain Coffee,
Packer Max,
Fourth Arrow Camera Arms,
Scent Blocker,
Scent Lock,
Copper John,
and Stanislawski Release Aids.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe until next week on the Up North Journal.